15 facts about the Ottoman Empire you didn't know. With a history spanning over 620 years, the Ottoman Empire is recognized as one of the most enduring and influential empires in history. At its peak, it controlled numerous territories, including what we now know as Egypt, Jordan, Bulgaria, and the Palestinian territories. Added to these were Greece, the northern coast of Africa, Syria, Romania, Lebanon, Hungary, parts of Arabia, Macedonia, and Israel. While its legacy is celebrated in some of these nations, in others, it remains a highly controversial and debated subject, a heritage of events and customs that are perhaps best forgotten. For this reason, today we will share 15 unsettling facts about the Ottoman Empire that you were likely unaware of, which will make you grateful not to have been born in that era. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay current with our latest content. Number 1. The unfortunate lives of Ottoman women. A woman's beauty was far from a blessing during the more than 600 years of the Ottoman Empire. There was nothing to stop women from being enslaved or, even worse, sold by their own fathers to become part of the Sultan's harem. The tradition in the Ottoman Empire was based on slave concubines alongside legal marriage for the entertainment and sexual reproduction of the Sultan. Because of this group of women outside of marriage was not looked down upon, unlike in our modern times. The Sultan would often receive exotic gifts from his governors, many of whom were young women of extraordinary beauty who had been enslaved, often with the encouragement of their parents, as a life in the harem promised luxury and comfort. Number 2. The Sultan's mother ruled the harem. If there ever was a mother who was both a procuress and, at the same time, despised by her son-in-law, it was the mother of the Ottoman Sultan. She was the one who controlled all matters related to her son's harem, and she did so with complete impunity and without being questioned. Known as the Supreme Lady, she not only chose the Sultan's concubines, but also had a great deal of control over which of them he saw, and at what time. This was a task of great importance, because the concubines who saw the Sultan more often had a higher chance of conceiving a child with him, which would elevate them above the other women in the harem. Number 3. The legality of slavery. In the Ottoman Empire, slavery was a legal and significant part of the economy and traditional society. However, its chilling legality persisted late into history, at a time when in other parts of the world this form of subjugation had been abolished for at least a century. The enslavement of women was a way of life that remained in effect under the Ottomans until 1908. This type of sexual submission was a component of their slave system throughout the empire's existence. The Ottomans were still selling slaves in the early 20th century at the same time that London was hosting the 5th Olympic Games in history. It is ironic that while one part of the world was celebrating competitive effort and rewarding merit, the Ottoman Empire was only just then suppressing the sale of female slaves. Number 4. The practice of fratricide. The killing of one's own brother is, without a doubt, one of the most controversial and chilling aspects of the Ottomans. But if this is already abominable, the fact that a father would promote such a practice is even more detestable. According to the terms of the law of governance of Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror, any member of the ruling dynasty who managed to seize the throne upon the death of the old sultan was not only permitted, but ordered to assassinate all of his brothers, uncles, and cousins. This was done to reduce the risk of rebellions and subsequent civil wars. Mehmed's law resulted in the deaths of at least 80 members of the House of Osman over a 150-year period, including the 19 brothers of Sultan Mehmed III, some of whom were still nursing infants. However, fratricide was not a practice exclusive to the Ottomans. It was also adopted by the Romans, Sasanians, and Byzantines. Number 5. the caging of future sultans. To curb the rivalry among successive heirs, and after the unpopular practice of fratricide was overcome, the Ottoman Sultan would place potential successors to the throne in elaborate rooms within the palace, where they were confined under constant surveillance. These isolation chambers served to prevent potential successors from conspiring to depose the Sultan, while also protecting them from their brothers. Contrary to medieval European practice, where the line of succession went from father to son, in the Ottoman Empire it was different. The throne would pass from father to son, but the next in line was the first younger brother, which was the root of the Ottoman succession problem. Scholars describe these rooms as cages, cruel chambers where a backward and fearful Ottoman administration would lock up its heirs from childhood until death or their ascension to the throne, sometimes 30 or more years later. When the time came for them to become sultan, these confined men often ended up being the least competent individuals to assume the throne. The cage was all they had ever known, and many were so fearful of leaving that they had to be physically forced out. Number 6. Large age gaps between viziers and their wives sultans would often marry their daughters and granddaughters to important viziers, officials, governors, and pashas of the government. Marrying a princess meant gaining influence, power, favors, and prestige in the court. So far, this story is not much different from others of the time, but the unsettling part is that, to the misfortune of these princesses, they were often very young, while their husbands could be very old. When the Ottoman military and political figure, Suleiman Pasha, married the daughter of Prince Selim, he was already over 50 years old, making him much older than his new wife and even older than his father-in-law. Number 7. The castration of certain servants. Few topics are more exotic than the eunuchs of the Ottoman Empire, slaves who had been castrated to serve, in the case of the Ottomans, as a class of servants who looked after the harems, among many other important functions. Since only women lived in the harem and any strange man was forbidden from entering, someone trustworthy needed to look after it. Someone sexually incapacitated so as not to bother the Sultan's concubines, the eunuchs. However, not even these men, who lived in a suite adjacent to the harem, could have contact with the harem's inhabitants. The harem's contact with the outside world was also managed by a eunuch. If the harem needed a doctor, this servant would bring him. If wood was needed, the eunuch would bring it. And if the people of the harem went for a walk, they were accompanied by one of these loyal servants of the Sultan. These unfortunate men were not exclusive to the Ottomans. They were also seen in Rome, Byzantium, China, Egypt, and Iran. Number 8. The use of impalement as a method of execution. Longitudinal impalement is a horrific method of execution that was often witnessed within the Ottoman Empire to punish various crimes. It was primarily carried out as a warning to others and to terrorize the population. In this repulsive form of death, a stake was partially sharpened and planted in the ground pointing upwards. The victim was then placed on the spike, which was partially inserted into the rectum or vagina. As the condemned person's own body weight dragged them further down the post, the semi-greased wooden stake would make its way through their body, piercing their organs with agonizing slowness, until it penetrated the entire torso and reached the neck or throat. The agony could last for up to 8 long days. Number 9. The unusual fetishes of Sultan Ibrahim. Sultan Ibrahim had a strange fetish for obese women. It is believed that on one occasion he became aroused by a cow's vagina while walking through a corral. He promptly ordered gold copies of this copulatory organ to be made and sent them throughout the empire to find a woman who was equally endowed, and he found her. She was a 350-pound Armenian woman with a genital that was identical to the cow's. She was brought to Ibrahim's harem and became one of his favorite concubines. The Sultan, also, had a fetish for furs, decorating his clothes, curtains, walls, and furniture with them. He also stuffed his pillows with them and preferred to have sex on marten pelts. Number 10. The son must die for the father's safety. Suleiman the Magnificent ordered the death of his son, Shehzadeh Mustafa, and sat to watch him be strangled with a bowstring. According to historical accounts, this was because Mustafa had gained a great deal of popularity within the army, something that was apparently a danger to his reign. Number 11. Only necessary conversation was spoken in the royal palace. Living in a palace during the Ottoman period was not as many would imagine. As it was considered improper for the Sultan to speak more than was necessary, his life in the royal palace became a silent and suffocating hell. It was so frowned upon for the Sultan to speak that a sign language was created, one that silenced the ruler who spent most of his palatial life in a stunned silence. It is believed that Prince Mustafa went mad from not being able to prohibit this custom. Soon after, he was seen throwing coins into the sea for the fish to spend. Number 12. The prevalence of capital punishment. Capital punishment was so common in the Ottoman Empire that there was an execution fountain in the first court, where the chief executioner and his assistant would wash their hands after beheading their victims. Historian Barnett Miller said, "This fountain was the most feared symbol of the arbitrary power of life and death of the sultans over their subjects, and it was hated and feared accordingly. Decapitation was used with particular frequency during the reign of Sultan Selim the Grim from 1512 to 1520, who, in a short reign of 8 years, went through 7 grand viziers and ordered 30,000 minor executions." Number 13. A race to avoid the death penalty. Towards the end of the Sultan's rule, capital punishment or any other execution did not mean an inevitable death sentence. A possibility had opened up for the condemned to save themselves, but only if they won a race. The condemned and the executioner would participate in what was surely one of the most peculiar and no less chilling customs known in history, a race between the chief gardener and his anticipated victim, the outcome of which was a matter of life or death. Although it is unknown how this custom arose, from the late 18th century, accounts began to emerge of death sentences handed down within the walls of the Topkapi Palace, which were generally delivered to the chief gardener at the central gate. The person in charge of carrying out these executions, the chief gardener, would challenge the condemned to a foot race through the gardens to the place of execution, a distance of about 300 meters. If the condemned won, their sentence was reduced from death to simple banishment. But if they lost, as was the case in most instances, they were immediately strangled upon reaching the gate. Number 14. Children were recruited to become soldiers. In the 14th century, the devshirme system was created, a practice through which the Ottoman Empire recruited children from Christian families to convert them to Islam and train them as Janissary soldiers, the elite warrior slaves in the service of the Sultan. The recruited children were between 12 and 14 years old. They were taken and made to march to Istanbul, a long journey during which the weakest would die along the way. The devshirme required conquered Christians to hand over 20% of their male children to the state. Although they served as slaves, it is also true that some of the converts became powerful and wealthy. Number 15. Soldiers had to take an oath of celibacy. The Janissaries were originally a fighting force composed of slaves who were subject to many strict rules, one of which was an oath of celibacy. The men of this corps were also not allowed to grow beards, so they had to make do with a simple mustache that made them more recognizable. 6 centuries of existence is a long time not to leave indelible marks on the world. The Ottoman Turks are often remembered for their powerful military, ethnic diversity. artistic enterprises, a debated religious tolerance, and architectural wonders. But for other people, these qualities mask a life of horrors, barbarities, and misfortunes. The influence of the powerful empire is still very much alive in the current Turkish Republic, a modern and mostly secular nation, considered by many scholars to be a continuation of the Ottoman Empire. We hope this video has been useful to you. If you have anything to add, please share it with us in the comments section, like this video, and send the link to your family and best friends so they can also learn more about the 15 chilling facts of the Ottoman Empire. If you are new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow us on all our social networks, which will be linked below in the description. Remember, a people who do not know